I'd seen anywhere, but we didn't agree with the analysis of it. I think the initial information and the way the data were analyzed about the decline of the population, the data were analyzed poorly and selectively, in my view. There were inconsistencies in the way the data were analyzed and so forth.
John Verge made a very important discovery, finding that many of the packs, not all, but most of the packs on the east side of the park would make these temporary forays outside of the park, even crossing several other wolf pack territories to get to these deer yards outside the park, kill a deer, eat the deer, and then go back to their territories, and they might do this several times in the winter. This had never been reported before, and it obviously put the wolves at some exposure to death from humans while they were outside the park. And that was an important discovery. But to therefore say that it happens with all park wolves, well, we just don't know. We have to get the evidence. Now, as you know, Dr. Brent Patterson is now studying the wolves of western Algonquin Park. My understanding is that he has found little to no evidence that the packs are migratory on the west side of the park, that they're sedentary.
When the data were reanalyzed with more appropriate analytical techniques, the answer remained consistent, but it was scientifically more acceptable. More of us could hang our hats on that peg now. There is a high probability that in fact this population has been in a state of decline over the last 11 years. That is, this subpopulation of wolves on the east side of Algonquin Park, to be more accurate. At that point, we had an option to, or the government had an option then, to think about putting the buffer zone, the township-wide buffer zone all the way around the park, or not.
They have to produce the evidence. It's not good enough for Brad White or John Verge or Dan Strickland or anybody else to say this is the case. They have to produce the evidence because that's the only thing that counts in science. As Carl Sagan said, in science there are only two rules. Evidence counts for everything and authority counts for nothing. So we must not just blindly accept the authority of anybody. We have to insist on their evidence. When it's a question of facts. When it's a question of values, hey, everybody can have their own values. There's nothing much you can say about it. You may say that Algonquin Park should be paved over and painted purple with yellow polka dots, and if that's your value, well, I'm sorry, I disagree with you, but I can't prove you wrong. You're not wrong. A value cannot be wrong. But if you say that the moon is square, well, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Because it is a fact that the moon is round.
What do you think is the biggest threat to Algonquin Park wolves?
The naturalist and the scientist.
That's just because of the misinformation.
That's right. Absolutely not. No, they have another gal working with him. I think she works with I believe it's Algonquin Wildlands League, and Deborah Freeman is her name. And I've had opportunities to speak with her. And the last time I spoke with her, we were in a meeting at Barry's Bay, and she told us there that she spent 2.5 months in Algonquin and never seen a wolf. I have a hard time to believe that kind of thing. I was working there at the very same time, and I could see sometimes 2 or 3 on my way in. I'd see the same coming out, and I'm not always sure if they were the same wolves because sometimes they were like 50 kilometers apart, the sightings. So either the wolves were awful fast, or they weren't the same wolves. So no, it's hard to get good information from any of those people.
Do you think that the science communication regarding Algonquin Park wolves has been adequate?
No. No. I don't. Various outlets get a hold of the story. They interview people to one side of the story, or they tend to interview people with extreme views on either end of the story, right? The media doesn't typically want to get it, not the daily media, and probably not even certain, you know, popular magazines, want to get into much of an analysis of these issues.
What happens with a lot of the scientists' information, it's only available to the select few. And what tends to happen is if there's something there that they don't want us to know, we won't find out about it. And that's the sad part, you know. They sometimes want to paint a picture that's only perfect to certain people's eyes. And it should be drawn out the way it actually is, instead of trying to have a fairy tale, you know.
For example, you pick up Seasons magazine, and there'll be a big picture of John Theberge and all his perspective, and he's a hero for saving the wolves, and this, that, and the other thing. Or you'll read in the papers that people with kids and sheep and dogs that live on the border of the park are less than thrilled with the idea of wolves running around. They have their point of view on the wolves and so forth, and all this makes for good press. Is the story about the workshop and the debates that happened there, and the scientific struggle that went on in that workshop between all the proponents around the table of different points of view? The hunters and trappers were there. Where's the story about that? Maybe nobody wants to read it. I think that's the story. See, but nobody else does.
That's what I'm trying to capture in this documentary. I hope someone wants to watch it. That's all.
Well, don't say I didn't warn you.
Well, when I usually do a tour, I start over here with our regalia site, and our regalia is it's part of our traditional ways of celebrating life, and each dance represents has a different meaning. We have a jingle dress right here that this is a healing dress, and each cone on there represents one day of the year. The younger women would have 180, like half a year. And they're not fully a woman. The full woman's outfit would have 365 cones on it. And what they would do is they would dance their special step, and they would bring healing to the family wherever healing is needed.
Do you feel that scientists have kept you well informed regarding Algonquin Park wolves?
That's one I don't really think so. The only information that I've really gotten from scientists would have been at the advisory group. And truthfully, it was confusing. When they're talking prey mortality, they're saying you've got to have X amount of beaver to feed a wolf. Well, that's about all I can say with that. It was confusing there at first. There is a CPAWS. I know Jean Langlois. He puts out information, or he was putting out information on the internet. Him and I were in contact quite often with the wolves, and but I guess he's more or less of a naturalist group. I guess it is Canadian Parks and Wilderness, and he was putting out more information than the scientists were, as far as I'm concerned.
So the public doesn't get to see this sort of conflict about the actual process of scientific discovery as something that's done for analysis. Their expectation is, well, this side will get their scientists, and that side will get their scientists, and they'll go at it for a while in the media, and then we'll all get tired. Politicians have that view, and so forth. So it's very hard to say your answer was scientific communication. I would say that's where it really falls down, and I wish we could do more of it. I think, frankly, you should be congratulated to be sitting there filming a guy who's trying to talk about this issue, about where the science fits into the advocacy arena, because you don't hear much of that.
Another thing that caught my attention over here is
Yeah, the Algonquin. Algonquin originated from a Mi'kmaq word is Algonquin, and Algonquin is is a nation that spears fish from the bow of their canoe. That's what Algonquin means.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the Algonquin name, our real name is Kitchissippi Rini. That's our tribe name, Kitchissippi.
What's this?
History. That's this is an actual wash machine, like a motor that would hook up to the wheel here, and it would shake your washing machine. You know, you'd have a dog on there or a goat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it would actually shake this machine. And we have the ringer down here.
And it's good exercise for the dog or goat
Yeah.
as well. So. Well, I was wondering how if the science, did it have any impact on you? Did it cause you to change the way you valued or perceived the wolf?
Not really. Like, I'd seen the wolf there, and I guess in the same light as I did when I went to that workshop. Like, it's just, like I said, opened my eyes a little bit there, like how, I guess, the other side, the scientist side compares it. Like, I could relate to a lot of what there was a Cattlemen's Association, they were there. I could relate more to what they were saying and what the trappers were saying, more than I could with what the naturalists or the scientists were saying.
Can you describe to me how the science of Algonquin Park wolves has altered the way you value or perceive the wolves?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I often say to people that, we all have the right to our own values. And if people are pro-wolf, that's a value. Or if they're anti-wolf, that's a value. And if it's the latter, I sort of regret it, but there's not really much I can say about it. But when it comes to facts, we do not have a right to our own facts. Facts are facts, and personally, the science wouldn't make any difference to me. My value is that I like wolves. I appreciate the role that they play in Algonquin Park. I appreciate the symbol that they are of wild country. Nothing is more beautiful than to be camped off in the interior of Algonquin Park and to hear a pack of wolves howling. If the science showed to me that there was absolutely no problem with their population, that they were restricted to just Algonquin Park, or that they were found everywhere in North America, it wouldn't change that. The facts of the situation would not change my personal value and feeling about wolves.
Anything that would change your current view of wolves?
I'm sure there are things that would change my view. I just don't know what they are till they come along. Just keeping up to date with the information and listening to all the groups and yeah, so I try to keep my ears open.
When researchers got together with environmental groups and raised awareness to the fact that this rare wolf species was being hunted and trapped outside the park, and they wanted to save the wolf, this was the reaction. This is one of Dr. Taberge's radio calling wolves. It was put up on a pole with a sign that says, "Do not dare us."
Because you were saying this was one of the biggest things that happened in this area. It got a lot of media coverage.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the ministry said that it was going to be bad for us with the tourists, everything, the tourists wouldn't come here anymore, and never changed a thing.
Probably the first time in history that Brown Lake was ever put on television.
Right.
Showed this street here My house for sure. Yeah, yours was out there too. They labeled us quite well. I think that's the same pole, eh, Bob? I don't think they changed that yet.
No, that's the same one. You just pull up the picture, you can view it right from here.
Yeah.
You know. See, that's right at the corner of the house. They were standing a little bit farther when they took that picture. The upper window. And
but it was very, very visible there when I stopped here at the stop sign.
I can imagine.
It was right there.
Yeah. Looking at you early in the morning, looking at that.
You better wait too long to run over.
That's right. Then Round Lake Center would be on the news again.
That's right.
wolf haters hit my car.
And two objective outside observers. I don't know what you can call them.
When the Algonquin wolf decision came out and we heard that there was a full year-round ban on hunting and trapping, this is exactly what Earthroots asked for. It was such an amazing reaction that we got when we posted this information on our email list. We got floods and floods of emails coming in saying, I can't believe this worked. I can't believe that our actions in writing a letter worked, that our outreach doing educational displays at schools worked. And people were more mobilized in the push for province-wide protection for wolves because they saw this one regional project work out in favor of stronger wolf protection.
My understanding is there's still a lot of dissatisfied people live around that park who feel a little disenfranchised now and so on and so forth. So, you know, whether this has been the right thing to do in the long term and whether hanging it on wolf conservation was the right thing to do, I don't know. You know, that it had to be done to conserve the wolves. There's a great deal of scientific uncertainty swirling about that. If the wolves persist, you know, the likes of people who were pressing for the buffer will see, it worked. And the others will say, oh, there's no evidence that they wouldn't have persisted even without it.
And the public would never see that mechanism, that sort of thought going around in the background.
No. Public doesn't see that kind of thought going around in the background. And so the uncertainty lingers. And probably rise up again. These things have a way of coming around again and biting us.
Was someone living in here at the time?
Oh yeah. They're quite old people. They never heard a thing.
Yeah. I wonder how they felt about it. They probably.
Well, no, I think they had it was a good sized nail.
There's the two nail holes.
Yeah. So it's right here.
Yeah. Right like that. It would have been sitting somewhere right like that.
Yeah.
And where were the holes that, like, you pointed right to the holes, I remember.
These are the two holes.
Big spikes right through the.
Okay. Great, thanks.
In fact, there's some wolf hair in there.
We held a position all the way through that we had made the case, well, in 1999, and more research was not necessary to come to a conservation conclusion against initial statements by the Ministry of Natural Resources, the usual stall, oh, we need more data. We ran the longest study ever in Canada. There's only one study in the world that's ever put more rhedo collars on a population. We had the best data for a management decision that's ever been provided in Canada, and we pushed the government to make it on the basis of that.
How much more money should we put into researching the unknown? As an ecologist, you have to say that you're never going to fully understand an ecosystem, and there comes a point where we have to say, you know what, we have to stop investing money in research and actually do some actions. So it took a long time for a decision to happen. I think that decision was only pushed forward to actually come to a final consensus last week because of public pressure.
So, one never really knows how big a group of people was really in on this deal, you know. But there was definitely a good number. And the reason for it was definitely because of the posters that they had. Not this particular poster, but they there's some of that's part of the that's the original poster there.
How dare you?
It says "How dare you" there, and it's fairly small print there, eh?
Right.
And I mean, they were going into mailboxes and dropping them off on people's doors. You know, you don't go around daring people, not in a small town like this. It's hard enough to make a living here without somebody running around. I'm not sure that's daring you to destroy a stupid wolf, you know. Like, this here wasn't done in spite, I don't think, of anyone. It was a message. It was a message being sent back to whoever come out with these signs. Because especially those pamphlets that they put out there daring people, how dare you, it said. Like, oh boy, that's a harsh statement, you know.
I was going to ask you about those because I saw that infamous photo of the wolf head with the radio collar mounted on a telephone post, and I noticed in the first picture I saw of it, I saw that "How dare you" poster above it. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, someone's been provoked by that poster to do that terrible thing, but then that organization's taking a picture of that to sort of demonize all hunters and trappers and use it as an advertisement for their own organization, which is, it's also wrong.
Yeah.
So, like, do you know what group it was that was distributing those posters?
That was that group out of Glebe here. There was no name to them, no nothing. There was just an address on their Glebe, Ontario, and they said that you could. There's a friend of mine here. He has a close friend, a relative of his there that works for the post office there, and he said just by what's on there you wouldn't trace nothing down, like as to where, how, or when it came from, you know.
I was wondering who removed the wolf head.
One of the CEOs here.
Oh yeah.
Blake Simpson.
He spent a lot. Yeah, Blake Simpson was the one that done the pulling here.
Yeah, no, I was here talking to him, and he asked me if I knew who did it. What am I going to tell him? Yes, I do.
I thought you were going to say it was me.
Yeah, I was pointing that way. Yeah, no, it happened and it happened. You know, that's not the only one. I mean, that wolf didn't suffer when they cut the head off. It was already dead. You know.
Yeah, they didn't cut the head off while he was running.
No.
It was obviously shot. So, and I guess, you know, with the collar being on it, they felt it was the perfect message there. And what better place could they find than here to put it up? So, you know. I have the right to speak my mind and ask for some action if I want it. This here, like, you know, is the work of a coward, as far as I'm concerned. Too big a coward to put his name to the garbage he's distributing, and that's the message they got back for those signs. And unfortunately, I got the blame for it.
And you as well.
Well, no, I mean, I'm involved, for sure. Yeah. But I mean, I've got letters in the mail. I mean, with no name signed. You know, I mean, it didn't bother me. But I mean, they're all a bunch of chicken shits. You know, it's what it is. Just like Sandy said. I mean, they haven't got the guts to put their name. You know. No. I mean, it's just crazy. Just crazy. Yeah.
And this here, I don't even know how legal that is. Like to put somebody's name and phone number out there.
I don't think it's legal.
And
no,
I mean, Andy Chepeski, I mean, he's a respectable doctor, retired doctor from Verge Bay. I mean, he would, you know, he knows all about wolves because he did a survey. Well, I think you know about it years ago with somebody.
Pimlot.
Yeah. Wolf survey years ago. So I mean, why do you even put his name? Wolf haters, Andy Chepeski. You know.
Advocacy is important. Okay. It's about people expressing their views and their values and so forth. It defines the poles of an argument. The danger in advocacy is when people purport to be trying to analyze something as sort of being the truth is one of these views or another. The truth often lies in the middle between poles in these extreme kind of debates, right? So, sure, advocacy defines the arena within which the analysis takes place, but the analysis goes on almost behind the scenes. It's the debate that's front and center. It's these people, and then people find themselves taking sides based on information that's bandied back and forth in any kind of contest of views like this, and forming their opinions often based on unreliable knowledge. And for us, in the scientific community, it has to be about exposing that unreliable knowledge. So advocacy, to me, from a scientific perspective, is important in describing kind of the parameters and delineating the unknowns that create the argument. And it's in there that we find, it's in that, I call it the radical middle ground, where we find the stuff of our business, or should find the stuff of our business. There's not much upsets me more than watching scientists drift to one or the other end of those poles, still, brandishing the mighty sword of science and objectivity when they're very clearly doing advocacy. Advocacy science is an oxymoron. Period.
This here is the Algonquin wolf, and it has been the subject of one of the longest studies of wolves in the world.